Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. Today we're doing things a little bit differently again. I just want to change it up. I'm getting tired of doing the same set little TBRs that I do for every video, so I want to leave it to chance. So in today's video we're gonna be picking 3 books by doing a random emoji generator. So I'm gonna screen record. I have no idea what that is. Okay, I'm gonna do it again. I'm gonna do it again because I don't know what that is. It looks kind of like a Ferris wheel or a dartboard. I'm not quite sure. So I am going to generate again. Oh, okay, we can work with that, I guess. It's just a man with a beard. So let me go pick a couple of books that I think could match this vibe, and then I will get back to you guys. Okay, this was very, very difficult for me. I literally don't know any character descriptions of any of the books I haven't read, but I thought this might fit because this is Songs in Eurasa. I can't ever say this. Songs in Eurasa Major, and this is supposed to be a love story, and it's described as being similar to the plot of like Daisy Jones and the Six, where this girl comes out and starts singing and she opens up for a famous musician, ends up having like a little love story or toxic situation with him. This is based in like the 70s, so I'd assume he'd have a beard. So that's the only correlation I could make. So this is going to be our first book on the list. Let's go and pick our next emoji. A devil. I don't have to show you, I'm screen recording. Okay, I think I have something for this, if I'm not mistaken. Let me just double check and read the backs and then I'll bring you my options. For this, I actually managed to get 3 out of this. So the devil I correlate with hell, obviously. So any books that like mentioned monsters, hell, anything like that. So the first one is Kingdom of the Wicked by Kerry Maniscalco. And this at the back says, 2 sisters, 1 murder, a quest for vengeance that will unleash hell itself. That sounds like it fits the prompt, especially because it has hell and I really like this cover. I've had this book for a bit and I'm interested. I'm really interested. The next book is actually a library book and I was hoping that something would fit one of these prompts, but this is called Very Bad People, and this kind of follows a girl whose mom tried to off all of them in a van, but she survived. She's then sent off to this prestigious boarding school and they have this underground society where they like do hauntings and there's ghosts and stuff like that. So that sounded really interesting and I think it kind of fits the prompt for that. And then the book I think I'm going to pick is this one, and it is called Girl, Goddess, Queen. And at the back, the big tagline says, thousands of years ago, the gods told a tale. It's loosely based on Greek mythology with Persephone, Hades, and it says Persephone wasn't taken to hell, she jumped. She wanted an escape. There was no way she was going to be married off to some smug god more in love with himself than her. That sounded very interesting, and I just got this out my library as well. It's like a YA fantasy, so I think this is the book that I'm going to pick since she actually goes to hell. Okay, last emoji. Oh, please be a good one. I have another library book over there as well, but it's more of a thriller and I'm hoping to add it into this as well. Generate, what is that? Camping, I think. Do I have anything like that or should we respin? Anything outdoorsy, I guess. What is this one about? No, I think I'm going to respin because I don't have anything to do with the outdoors or camping. Oh, I have a moon. I'm recording. I have a moon. I think I'm going to pick this library book, which is Very Bad People. I think it kind of matches the prompt because this takes place at night. They have this secret society that meets up and goes to this place called the Haunted Rail, and I don't know, I think maybe it might fit. Otherwise, I don't think I have anything else. Let's go with that. That was very loose, but I probably wouldn't have picked these up in this order. Yeah, I probably would have just read all my library books together, but I think this is a nice way to break it up. So we have Songs in Eurasa Major, we have Girl, Goddess, and why do I sound robotic? And Very Bad People. So very excited. I think the first book I'm going to read is probably the biggest one. I'm going to read Girl, Goddess, Queen, and we'll see how we get on with that. I'll let you guys know when I'm about 100 pages in, but I'm very excited for this video. So first check-in for this book. I made it to page 118, chapter 13, as you can see over there. This book is described as a fantasy rom-com, and like I mentioned before, it's supposed to be a fresh new take on a romance between Persephone and Hades. However, her name isn't Persephone in the book, it's Core. I felt that there's a lot of info dumping in the first few chapters, like a lot, and there's so many mentions of like different Greek gods, different mythical creatures, and it was just too much, to the point where I was like rolling my eyes and was like just kind of skimming. At first I was googling a lot because I don't know an awful lot about Greek mythology. I know like the basics like Hercules, Zeus and all of that, but ultimately I don't know that much, so I'm having to research a lot of things. So that wasn't fun to start the book off with. There's just nothing really happening. Like I feel like the story's just moving extremely slow. I think this is supposed to be a series. If I'm not mistaken, there is a second book out. I don't know how much more it stems, but I know there's 2 books out at the moment. So I don't know if this is going to be like one of those really slow burn books again, which, if you know, is not my favorite. So far what's happened, or what was introduced in the first 100 pages, was Core had her naming ceremony. So she was named Core because Zeus asked her, because he's like the king of all kings, and or the king of all gods, shall I say. He asked her what is it that she desires most, and she said the world, and he was like, okay, well, what would you do with the world? And she said, fill it with flowers. So he's named her Core because she's the goddess of flowers, and yeah, because her mom is Demeter, who is the goddess of harvest, so it kind of went hand in hand. But she wasn't very happy with it because it's not one of the powerful powers that you can get as a god. She has just come of age and she needs to get married, so her mother is Demeter and her dad is actually Zeus. They are now arranging a marriage for her, but she doesn't want to get married, and she's told her father multiple times that she didn't want to get married, and he's like, you'll do what I tell you to do. He's like the worst type of person, as Zeus is normally described, very controlling, very narcissistic, very egotistical. He just isn't having it. So they've gone out now and gone to look for a husband for her, and during this time she's like planned an escape, so she has nowhere where she can go, because obviously Zeus manages the sky, or has control of the sky, Poseidon has control of the water, and Poseidon and Zeus are close, and then obviously her mom is the harvest goddess, so she has control of all the land, so she'd be able to send her no matter where she went. So she decides to go to the underworld to seek asylum in hell with Hades, but he doesn't want her there because he doesn't want to be involved in all the drama, because he's a recluse. He just doesn't want anything to do with the gods above because they're all full of shit and all this stuff, so he's literally likes to be by himself. So she seeks asylum, he won't give it to her, so she calls this thing called Xenia, which is like, it's an oath that you would protect someone asking for protection. Very interesting, but at the same time quite boring. Like, we're just going round in circles now because they don't like each other, which obviously is an enemies to lovers trope. He thinks she has ulterior motives, she thinks he has ulterior motive, and he's a dick, but he is basically the devil. So that's how far I've gotten now. She's been in hell for a few days and her parents haven't noticed yet that she's missing, but she knows hell will rain down. Yeah, not really. Zeus will rain down once they discover that she's missing and is not sticking true to getting married. I think she's around 18, so I guess it is YA. Hades is basically the same age as her because of Kronos, who swallowed all the kids. So they've been thawing them as Zeus defeated Kronos. So he was like one of the later ones to be reanimated. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure how I feel. I'm not wanting to reach for it. I'm not really that interested. And at the moment where she is in hell, she's realized that hell hasn't really been maintained. There are people in the underworld, both that have committed sins and those that haven't, and they all like reside together. So she's gone to see the spirits and stuff, and they're all tormented because they were the victims of horrible crimes and their perpetrators are all roaming around with them. So she's took it upon herself now to bring order to hell, which is a little bit strange since Hades is the god of the underworld and he's not done anything about it. That's as much as I've gotten from it. I'm going to keep reading. I'm hoping that I can get a good chunk done by the weekend or over the weekend. So maybe I'll come back when I'm like 2/3 of the way through, and then yeah, we'll see what happens. But so far, not having the best time. Good morning, everyone. It is currently Monday, so I had the weekend to read as much as I could, and I made it quite far. I'm at page 399, chapter 39 over there. Don't know if it will focus, but that's where I currently am. So I've had quite a bit of the book, and I think the last time I checked in, I was just over 100 pages. So a lot has happened, but a lot hasn't happened. I'm not reading too critically. I never really do, but as I said, this is a Persephone and Hades retelling or reimagining. It's kind of changed it, but I feel confused because obviously Greek mythology is way back, and they're using a lot of like today's words like, oh, we're gonna be besties, and it feels so misplaced in the context of the story. I'm finding that the sentence structure is also just messing with me, because like they'll have like two conversations in a single sentence. Like she'll contradict herself in the middle of a sentence, like I didn't like him, comma, I actually did like him, and then carry on the sentence. And I'm like, it just doesn't flow correctly with me. So I'm really struggling with that. I also mentioned that her name was Core, and it's just changed to Persephone because the way she was named in her naming ceremony was incorrect because her father is a spiteful ass. It's now Persephone, which actually means goddess of chaos. I didn't know that. I'm learning a lot about Greek mythology, but at the same time, I'm finding some of this very boring. I like the description of the scenery and the landscapes of the underworld and how Persephone has helped change that, and she has a lot more empathy for things that the other gods don't. We all know that Greek gods are really selfish and self-absorbed and self-entitled. She's like the opposite of that, even though her mother is Demeter, which is the goddess of plants and harvest, and her dad is Zeus. She's just different. But our main male character, who is Hades, obviously, is like the typical fantasy male character arc, and he's dark and broody and a shadow daddy, and inside, you know, he's soft and has all these interests that don't align with the character he portrays to everyone, kind of like a similar depiction of Brysand from Akatar. And it feels like the same concept, and I don't mind it, but like I just wish there was a little bit of variety. But obviously people know that this works and people have loved it in the past, so they try and redo that. But this was written in 2023, so yeah, I'm finding it difficult. A lot of it is written with so much description, even though I like the description of the landscape and whatever. The internal turmoil that both characters are having, even though we get one point of view, you can kind of read between the lines, it's just being drawn out too much. And I understand that it's a slow burn and it is YA, but it's just being drawn out too much. And I'm like, get a grip. We're almost at the end of the book and it's like almost 500 pages. Like, why are we waiting so long to draw this out? But ultimately, I just feel like it's an okay book. It's nothing great. It's nothing grand. It's just, it reminds me of a few other stories. I think somehow we've missed the mark here and it could have been done so much better. It's described as a rom-com, but I've laughed a couple of times, and it's not between the two main characters. It's a side character that's making me laugh more so. So I just finished Girl, Goddess, Queen by B.F. Fitzgerald literally 5 seconds ago. Oh my gosh, the last like 100 pages or however long I had left, so insufferable. I was rolling my eyes. I started skimming. I feel like this book was just too long. It could have been edited down maybe by even 200 pages, because this is a large book. Like, this is a normal size book. So no, it's not even a normal size. Let's get a normal size book next to this. So this is a normal size. There were so many words on the page. If this had to be a book like this, I think it would be over 600 pages, over 700 pages even. It was too long and it dragged on, and yeah, I just felt unsatisfied. At the end I was like, okay, cool, I finished a book. So I don't know what I want to give this yet. I did tell you all about how I was feeling along the way, what I liked, what I didn't like, so I'm not going to repeat myself, but I don't know what my rating is going to be. I'm sitting between between a 2.75 and a 3-star still, but I'm really unsure of how I felt about it. I feel like, it just dragged on. It just dragged on. That's my worst critique. I just couldn't do it anymore. So I'm really glad we finished it. I just spent like an hour trying to finish it, but I've also been reading it so slowly just because of like the sentence structure. Like I said, we're done this finally. Moving on, I think I am going to start Songs in Ursa Major by Emma Brody. I think I'm going to do this one next because I don't know if I can physically handle another YA book, which the other book is, although it's a different genre. It is a mystery thriller, I think. This, I think, is general fiction. I'm not quite sure. I haven't done the research that I need to, which I will do now. I have a few things to do, but I definitely will start this later on this evening, and then I'll come back to you. How long is this book? I think it's just over 300. Yeah, I'll read 100 pages and then come back to you guys with my first initial thoughts. But for now, yeah, I need to sit on my thoughts on the previous book, Girl, Goddess, Queen. I can't remember the name for some reason. I'm going to sit on my thoughts for that for a bit and let you know as well. I don't want to read anything else immediately because I think I might get a bit slumpy then, because that was making me feel like I just didn't want to read. Like I just got frustrated. But anyway. Good morning, friends. It's really early today, actually. It is 8:20 and I've already done my Bible studies for the morning, and I'm about to do my morning reading, which is usually an hour. So I thought I'd check in with you guys before I continue on, because I've reached page 100 or 107 actually, because last night I thought I'd read an additional chapter. So I'm on chapter 13, page 107, like I said. And I don't think I told you what this book is about, but the emoji with the bearded man was what chose this book for us. It is historical fiction / romantic, I think it's called, or romance fiction. So it is a romance essentially, but I think it is also like largely general women's fiction as well. So this is basically like Taylor Jenkins Reid, but less verbose. This author, Emma Brody, doesn't use as many like prose and flowery writing in her books like Taylor Jenkins Reid does, but I always say that wrong. Taylor Jenkins Reid, like she does, but it follows a band in 1969, I think, so 1969 to 1970, and it is a local band that is basically a nobody. They kind of get discovered because they play at this festival that is in this town every single year, and they usually play on the amateur stage. There is a main act for the main stage that cannot make it or hasn't been able to make the event, so they are pushed up to the main stage, and they make such an impression on the crowd as well as all the media that are there that they are kind of discovered. However, back in these days, women weren't always taken seriously in the music industry if they weren't being able to like be manipulated or kind of pushed in a certain creative direction that the producer or studio wanted them to go to. They were kind of just shunned. Jane, our main female character, is part of this amateur club called the Breakers. However, she comes from a line of women who are not really into like love and marriage and all of that stuff. They are largely just spinsters. Her mom was a songwriter but just disappeared one day because she fell in love and her heart was broken or something like that. Jane has now been discovered with her band, and they go and record a album in New York, but unfortunately I don't know what it's called, like an agent that kind of got them into the studio, brings them in to record, but the producer doesn't like that Jane is a female and she's also the lead singer and a guitarist. She's very talented. She can play almost any instrument with strings. He doesn't like her. So he tries to like manipulate her, but she's not having any of it. She originally signed the contract that said that they as a band would have more of the creative control in what direction they would go in, but obviously they would take advice. And this guy, the producer, is an asshole. He comes in and, you know, is really derogatory towards her. She stands up to him and it ends up affecting their first record. Then we have Jesse Reed, who is a new and upcoming artist, and he was actually actually the main actor couldn't make it that they replaced, and he was in a serious car accident. And Jane on the side, she's a bartender as well as like a carer. So her aunt ends up caring for Jesse Reed after he was in a accident, and she helps her aunt take over some shifts, and the two of them become friends. So that's kind of where I'm at. So far, I really like it. I really like it. I didn't think I would because I don't really like historical fiction. I personally don't like history that much because it is very traumatic. Like, I don't like reading all the bad stuff that happened. I know that I need to know that stuff in order for things not to repeat itself in the future and all of that, but ultimately it's not my favorite subject to either talk about, think about, or read about. This, the way it is written, I just feel like I'm right there with them. I'm right there with the band. I am going on this journey. Jane is very much like in the habit of believing their generational trauma, and she won't open up, and I feel like I'm just enjoying that side of things. I know obviously with romance books there is going to be a third act breakup, and I'm very curious to see where that goes or what is the cause. However, one thing I do not like about the book is it has a lot of like name dropping and musical references, which I feel don't need to be in here in order to make it a good and understanding book. Like, they name drop like Rolling Stones, and I don't know who the Bulletins are, but the Bulletins, and then we have like bits of like song lyrics, which all of us, I know as readers, do not enjoy. It's quite annoying. I've kind of just skimmed over them, or sometimes it's actually repeating lyrics from a previous song they've spoken about. So if I know the lyrics, I just skim past it, and it's actually fine. I still understand the gist of the story. That's kind of how I feel. I think I rambled a little bit there because I wasn't sure what I was going to say because I'm not that far in. We'll see where this relationship goes, but so far it's fun. It's really fun, and I'm flying through it. So I'm going to do an hour of reading now. I think I'll come back maybe in about 100-ish pages, maybe 150, before I get to the end and tell you if my opinion has changed, and then we'll finish up this book and start our last book. Good morning, everyone. So just a quick update because I did get to the desired page and chapter. So I'm on chapter 32, page 248. So I'm a good way through this, and I said I would let you know if I'm still enjoying it, and I really am. I really am liking the story. I am, like I said before, not a fan of historical fiction at all, nor romance, but the romance isn't like a big part of it. It is more about like her success, Jane, being a female in the music industry at a time where they were kind of frowned upon or not respected, and she's taking matters into her own hands because she's just so musically talented. And there's just basically a couple of bad eggs in this record company that she is signed to that just doesn't like her and is trying every way and everything to get her to quit. At the moment, one of the producers, I think I told you yesterday, I'm not sure if I mentioned him, but he's such a dick, and she kind of fell out with this love interest, and so he kind of cancelled their contract because she didn't benefit them anymore because she wasn't dating one of their co-signers or whatever. So it's very manipulative, but it's a fun story. I do like the way it's written. It's very easy to digest. It's feeling like a 3.75 or 4-star. There's still some bits that I don't really enjoy, which are like the rants going on about other bands and like musical stuff that I feel are a little bit irrelevant. But if you do like music, if you can read music, if you are yourself a songwriter or at least play in your own private time, I feel like you would enjoy this because I don't even know what your major is. I did music when I was in like school, but quite young, and that was more than 20 years ago. So I don't remember much. I don't even think I could read music anymore because I've forgotten because I haven't practiced, but it's very focused on the technicalities of music as well. But without those parts, the story is actually really good about like women having to survive in a time where they weren't taken seriously. The industry was basically just run by men, so they were quite overlooked unless they could be molded into what the record company wanted to be, kind of like Britney Spears and Christina Aguilera, where they just shaped them into like these sex symbols where they didn't take their musical talent as seriously as they should have. So it's really good. That's kind of my opinion right now. I plan to finish this today because we still have one book left, and unfortunately this video has taken me quite a while to film. The first book took me exactly a week to read. This one's taken me about 4 days now because I'm just really anxious. I don't know if you can see my face, but haven't been sleeping, haven't really been eating. Like, I just have this really high anxiety right now, so it's hard for me to focus on one task at a time because my mind is spiraling. So it's taken me a while, but it's understandable. And like I said, I do pre-film quite a bit, so it's not a train smash, but I would like to just get this video done so I can move on to my next video. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. But anyway, I'm gonna go on my walk just to kind of get rid of some of this anxiety and listen to an audiobook, and then I will come back and finish this. Hi everyone! So I finished this yesterday. We were reading Songs in Ursa Major. I actually looked up what Ursa Major is. I can't even say it. And it is actually a constellation of stars. So there's Ursa Major and Ursa Minor, which is also known as the Big Dipper, which I didn't know before. So yeah, that was interesting. I really liked this book. I had such a good time reading it. It was much deeper than I thought. Like I said, the musical stuff kind of went in over my head, but it spoke about like female rage and sticking up for yourself in an industry back then that didn't take women seriously. It covered addiction and generational trauma and kind of breaking out of the molds that people set for you. So I thought it was really, really good and I had a great time. I think I'm going to settle on a 4-star for this because the ending really had me, especially because it led you in one direction but it ended up being another. Like, you always think like after all their struggles that they'd end up together and stuff, but it doesn't always end up like that. It's not always a happy ending, which I thought was great. I know some of the creators that I've seen review this book didn't really like it, but for me it covered everything that I would want in a book. There was a lot of emotion, there was the processes of things being done and how different people deal with different situations and how addiction can kind of grasp you at times when you don't even realize, and how trauma can impact and with depression and all of that. I thought it was great. I think I'm going around in circles now, but I had a really good time reading this. I would recommend. It definitely has, like I said, a lot of musical terms and stuff like that. So if you don't know a lot of it, you can still get by. But I would say that it's a good book. It's a good book. I had a really good time. It was easy to read, easy to understand. It went in a very linear way, which I like. And there were like time jumps, like a year in between, and you didn't feel those time jumps because they kind of caught you up without being too verbose. So I had a really, really great time reading this. So our last book was Very Bad People by Kit Frick. And this one was chosen by, I think, the moon emoji, if I'm not mistaken, because I wanted something like at night, dark, haunted type of vibe. So this follows, I can't even pronounce her name properly, but it's Calliope, I think her name is Calliope, and she was in a huge accident with her mom and her 2 sisters. Her mom ended up passing away. They ended up driving through a guardrail into a river. Her 2 sisters and herself survived. They don't really remember much of the accident because it was so traumatic and they were like younger. So this is 6 years later, and she lived and grew up in a very small town. So everybody knows the story, everybody knows her, and she doesn't like the stigmatism that has been placed upon herself and her family after this accident. So she elects to go 2 hours away to go to boarding school, and her mom actually attended this boarding school because she was an alumni. So she's kind of now moved on. Moved to the school. So I'm on page 48, chapter 13. This is so fun to read because because the chapters are sometimes like 2 pages or a single page. I love that. I love that, especially for the last book in this video. I think it's very fast paced, but she's now moved to the school and been invited to the secret society that it names on the back. And I'm not sure what this secret society does, but she feels like somehow this is going to link to her mom, and just being at the school is going to uncover a lot more about her mom that her mom didn't really like show to the rest of the world. So it's very interesting so far. Calliope is such a weird name, but apparently it's from like some sort of fairy tale or mythology. I haven't really looked into that, but that's how far I am so far. She's kind of an outcast because she grew up in such a small town where everybody knew everybody. Like in her school, there was literally 11 pupils in every single grade. So this is a whole new world for her. She's just attended her first day of school. She's 16, so it is young adult, but I'm really excited to see where it goes. Good morning, everyone. So it is Monday today. I've honestly been doing this video for this will be the 3rd week. So it's basically taken me a week to read 2 books or 2 and a bit books. I don't know what's going on. But I think it was that first book, definitely. The first book we read was Girl, Goddess, Queen, and I feel like that just set me back quite a bit. But anyway, I've been reading this over the weekend, Very Bad People by Kit Frick. I don't know, I can't remember how much I told you about the book, but it was kind of like this really bad accident happened to Calliope 6 years ago. She's now gone to the school that her mom went to. It's called Tipton, and she's joined the secret society because she's an alumni or related to an alumni or whatever. So she made it into the secret society, and this secret society it rights the wrongs in their school. So they now have a dorm that has been made for like females only. They have more representation on campus, like, you know, more queer people, more black people, and this is all done through the ghosts. And they do these things called larks, which are like pranks, but they go over and above pranks, and they always have a ulterior meaning or a call to action. So Calliope's now part of this group, and I know at the back it says that she somehow connects what happens to her mother to this secret society, but we've lost the plot. This is only about the larks happening at school. We've had little snippets of like her wondering about her mum and her mum, how it all happened, because when the accident actually happened, she was asleep in the backseat and she woke up once they had hit the water and the car was starting to fill up. All the windows were down as well, and she's just had like she had like a little flashback after seeing someone, and she feels like he was connected to it somehow. The secret society goes deep. It's gone like over 50 years, and they've always been a secret. Even once you leave the school, no one really talks about the society. She feels like someone within the society had something to do with her mom's death, but that's kind of how far as it goes. We're just focusing on basically the larks that are going on, or the pranks. I just feel like I wanted to know more about how this all connects to her mom. I got 100 pages left and she's gotten nowhere, absolutely no information. She can't figure out who this guy was that she saw across the road from the coffee shop and kind of sparked a memory. She wrote him a couple of letters and he's responded, but that's just cut off there, and that's it. We don't get any information about it. So it's basically just an academic setting with high schoolers, and I just feel like it's very mundane at the moment. There's a lot of things that the authors kind of just glossed over, and I wanted more detail in that, but I guess that's a risk you take reading a young adult book, and she's 16. So there's a lot of things, I guess, that when you were 16 or even 15, 14 reading this book, it would make sense to you. But as a fully functioning adult, it just doesn't make sense. And I feel like there's a lot of plot holes in this. So I'm not loving it. It is very easy to read. It's written quite young. At the same time, I thought I would get a little bit of a thrill out of it, or just watch this mystery unfold. At the moment, the lark that they're doing is really personally affecting Calliope, because she has to take their word for it. Like, they come up with these campaigns and everybody needs to vote against it. And if you vote, I mean, everybody votes towards it. And if you vote against it, they kind of single you out. So it doesn't make sense. I feel like the whole storyline is just a little bit too surface level. There's nothing being investigated. Like, how can she have found all this information about something that could potentially be connected to her mother, and then the trail kind of goes cold and she's like, oh well. Like, okay, like, what was the point of bringing that into the story at all then? It just doesn't make sense. Even the grief in here is just kind of glossed over. No one's really dealing with it. No one's really talking about it. There's a couple of instances where she feels the grief and she compares it to being back in the water, being submerged, but then that's over and we move on to class the next day. And it just feels too surface level and a little bit too sporadic. Like, she was just trying to get as much as she could into the book and just like spitballing ideas without having actually fleshed out any storyline. That's kind of what it feels like for me now. It's the same day. I went for my walk, I finished my reading, I just had a shower, and I thought I'd just outro this video so I can start my next one. I finished it like maybe half an hour ago, but I showered, washed my hair and all that stuff, like I said. I'm not gonna lie, I was disappointed. I felt like we got no resolution in this book, and it ended with an open-ended ending. That was it. It just basically ended. It felt very, very undercooked, and I was unsatisfied. So I think I'm gonna settle on a 2.75 for this. Not the outcome I was hoping to have, but unfortunately that's the reality of it. Some books you love, some books you don't. So I'm sure I've spoken about this enough now, so I don't want to repeat myself, but the first half of the book was really enjoyable. I was having a good time, I was getting into it, and it just went off on a tangent. It lost the plot, and unfortunately it just didn't satisfy anything I needed it to. It is a YA mystery slash thriller, but unfortunately, like I said, undercooked, so we didn't get any resolution, and at the end of the day it was just meh, in my opinion. So that brings us to the end of the video where Emojis picked my reads for a week. If you don't remember, so the emoji that picked this book for us, I don't know if you noticed there's a little cut, I had to double check. The emoji that chose this book for us was a moon, and I chose it because it had ghosts and hauntings and stuff like that in it, so I thought it would align with it. Did it suit it? Probably not really, but I still had to pick one. So 2.75, like I said. Then just to recap, the last book we read was Songs in Euros. I could never say it. In Songs in Ursa Major, and this one we had a little bearded man that picked this, and because it took place in 1969 to 1972, I thought that would suit the vibes because I'm sure they all had beards and there were some hippies around, so I thought that matched the theme of it. I think this was my favorite book in this video. It was a 4-star. I had such a good time. It explored all these things that I didn't think it would, and because I had heard other people say quite negative or mediocre things about the books, I didn't expect it to be as good and as meaningful to me, but I had a great time with this. And like I said, the bearded man. Then we had a devil emoji, which I thought matched this book as it is a Persephone and Hades retelling, and Hades, if you don't know, is the king of the underworld or the king of hell, so I thought that would match the prompt well. Ultimately, this again, it didn't align with my tastes as much as I wanted it to. I think it put me in a slight bit of a slump, as did this one over here. I felt very slumpy reading it. Maybe it was just because it wasn't holding my attention, but this I also gave a 2.75 to. Like I said, it was Persephone and Hades retelling. It had strong bones, but it again just didn't deliver for me. But I had a great week. Well, I'm telling lies here. I had an okay week of reading. It took me much longer than I wanted it to. It took me like 2 weeks and a day, which is really long for me to do a reading vlog for. But ultimately, I got some books read that I really wanted to read. I wasn't sure where I would place this book, but I'm glad that it had a place in this video. Emojis did an okay job choosing my TBR for the week. Let me know if I should do this again and what your thoughts are. For me, I'm not sure if I can leave it to Emojis. I don't trust it that much anymore. But that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please remember to like, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you all in my next one. Bye guys.